The New Soundscape, R. Murray Schafer. A Handbook Book for the Modern Music Teacher, 1969, BMI Canada Limited. Clark and Cruikshank, Toronto, Canada. Chapter 1. Yes, but is it music? Definition from the Concise Oxford Dictionary, 4th edition, 1956. Music. Art of combining sounds with a view to beauty of form and expression of emotion. Sounds so produced. Pleasant sound, e.g., song of a bird, murmur of a brook, cry of hounds. End quote. So, at least in the 50s, the definition of music was already ecological, the standard one, not human-centered, not anthropocentric, but ecocentric. Well, it was anthropocentric as well, but at least on a secondary level, it was also ecocentric. So not even biocentric, bird and hounds, but also the murmur of a brook, so ecocentric. Okay, let's start this chapter. It was practically my first day in the music room. In the interest of finding out what we were supposed to be doing there, I set the class a problem. Innocently, I asked, "What is music?" If you're listening, well, we just had that definition. Do you agree with it? Is it a good definition? As a music education philosopher, right? As a Christian philosopher, as a critical philosopher, I'm often wrestling with definitions. What is music? Is it an art? It seems, at some level it is, right? Does it have to do with beauty and form, expression and emotion? It seems to, right? Pleasant sounds? Sometimes they're pleasant. Songs of a bird, is that music? I would say right away, yeah. I think most people would, only people who have some type of need to not have birds include. Murmur of a brook. That is a little harder for me because I kind of have a biocentric view, right? Is there a mind behind the murmur of a brook? Well, God's mind. So then, yeah, I guess. Cry of hounds, definitely. Even though they're domesticated, right? Chasing a fox. Okay, let's see. Continue on with Schafer's book. We spent 2 solid days groping around a definition. We found that we had to reject all the customary definitions because they weren't inclusive enough. You can't have a definition that doesn't embrace all the objects or activities of its class. There we go. That's one part of a definition, that it's inclusive, that it says what it is, right? As I always say for definitions as a philosopher, I say a good definition says what something is, but then also says what it's not. Sometimes we have definitions that are too broad, too inclusive, that include things that are outside. So how do we make that? So it's kind of a middle ground, right? Widening and closing, widening and narrowing until you get a definition that's just right. Well, continuing on. The definition we did come up with and the transcript of our thinking path is reported in the first volume of this series, A Composer in the Classroom. I actually don't have that one. I'm happy I was able to get a hold of this copy of this old book. Of course, naturally, I've written in it some time ago already. Different colors of pen, so probably more than once. Numerous thoughtful people have pointed out inadequacies of that definition. I agree with their criticisms. Okay, so they had a definition in that of music, which was inadequate to Schafer's opinion. Fair. The simple fact is that as the growing edge we call ourselves avant-garde continues, the growing edge we call the avant-garde continues its explorations along the frontiers of sound, any definition becomes exceedingly difficult. Yeah, I think avant-garde music was something then. It still exists at universities, though really it is deader than a door now. What was a famous Frank Zappa quote about jazz in the 70s? You know, jazz might not be dead yet, but there's a smell. Avant-garde long ago smell, and that smell's gone, except for when it appears at a university, usually for some type of master's recital for a degree in composition. And then a composer never touches it again because they, if they're lucky, get a job writing for TV or movies or something, video games. I don't know, whatever composers actually do when they actually do them in today's society. Because there's not, at least in America, we don't have those big state government orchestras like they have in Europe to keep dead music alive. Universities try to, but they're impoverished. Check the news. Every week you see a new news story about our big universities being too poor to pay faculty, so they're cutting them, right? Or pay the people driving trucks for them, so they're cutting them. Or janitors, they're cutting them. Or buildings, or programs, they're cutting them. Yeah, that's America's university system right now. It's been that way for about 10 years. When John Cage opens the door, John Cage, that's the guy who wrote that piece that's 4 minutes of sitting in front of a piano quietly. I first saw that in my undergrad. I did undergrad in the 1990s, so at least it was still the 20th century. And somebody could say, wow, this avant-garde music might still be alive, might still be coming back. Heck, Murray Schafer was still alive until recently. And his music was pretty avant-garde. When John Cage opens the door of this concert hall and encourages the street noises to intersect with his compositions, he ventilates the art of music with fresh and seemingly shapeless concepts. Nevertheless, I do not like to think that the question of defining the subject to which we are devoting our lives was totally impossible. I did not think John Cage would think so either, so I wrote him and asked him for his definition of music. His reply: music is sounds around us, whether we're in or out of concert hall. C.F. Thoreau. There's John Cage's definition. I kind of like that. Especially bringing in Thoreau implies an ecological that you wouldn't think an urbanite like John Cage would necessarily be drawn to, right? But maybe. The reference to Thoreau's Walden, where the author experiences in the sounds and sleights of nature, is inexhaustible entertainment. To define music merely as sounds would have been unthinkable a few years ago. That's not only unthinkable, but it gets that inclusive thing, but it also doesn't get the specific, right? Too much it sounds. That's not music. But then again, to what extent was John Cage ever composing music? He was composing sounds. I remember seeing a video of him, it was black and white, so I'm guessing probably 1950s, where he had he was turning on like a blender and different kitchen appliances. And they played to him, but I don't think any late night show would do that today. Maybe. But it came off as comedy even then and not real music or not real art. Though today it is the more exclusive definitions that are proving unacceptable. Little by little, throughout the 20th century, all the conventional definitions of music have been exploded by the abundant activities of musicians themselves.